My name's Janice Turnbull. I had my stroke 19 years ago when I was 34. Initially, I was paralysed all down my right-hand side and my eyesight was completely disturbed. I was seeing, not double, I was seeing many multiples and spent all the time that I had to with my eyes closed because it just made me feel so sick, a terrible vertigo with the double vision. After about, I think probably about 3 or 4 months, I was still in hospital. I went and saw, and I presume she was an ophthalmologist, and she did an eye test and diagnosed me with muscle weakness. I now know it was called nystagmus. I came out of hospital probably after about 6 months. Wasn't able to drive, obviously I couldn't see. My eyesight was still very poor, still seeing double, especially when I was fatigued or tired. I couldn't read, I couldn't follow a sentence. If I started to read, all the words would merge. I couldn't concentrate on the TV. So for me, audiobooks were a lifesaver.
Hi, my name is Janet, and it was 24 years ago when I was 35 when I had a brain hemorrhage and had to have a burr hole operation to let the pressure out. When I came round from the coma, I was very confused, and I had expressive and receptive aphasia, a severe right-side hemionopia, a hemiparesis, dyspraxia, cognitive problems, memory problems, sensory loss, which were all hidden disabilities. But at the beginning I didn't know what had happened to me. I had some sort of amnesia. My brain wouldn't take the information in. I had no idea that I had got vision loss. It's not like vision loss at all. It's not like when you can't see because it's dark. It had just gone, and it's really hard to explain and understand. I had my first walk at home after the hospital, and it was in September, and it was a lovely day, but it was in the afternoon, and so the sun was low, and I'd forgotten not to look straight into the sun, and this made me very ill, and I had to get a doctor, and he said, well, what the problem was, because your brain was getting the wrong signals, and I couldn't stop shaking for 2 days because of that.
Hello, my name is Jim Curry, and I'm a stroke survivor. I suffered a stroke in 2006, and up until then I had never been ill. Very healthy, never any problems. And then one day, everything changed. I had a stroke. I ended up in hospital and not realising what was going on. It took me about 5 days or so because I couldn't comprehend what was going on, I understand anything, because of the way the stroke had affected me. And from the stroke, I discovered that I had visual problems. None of this was picked up in the early stages of my stroke. It was probably about 8 months later that it was taken seriously. And I mean in that during the time I was in hospital, I mentioned that I had problems with my eyesight, and I had these flashing lights in my eyes. And on top of that, I used to keep cutting myself shaving. I would stumble over things. I'd stumble into things in the corridor. I'd walk into people in the corridor when I was on the ward. At home, I would stumble over things. I would walk into doors. I was a disaster in the kitchen because I kept cutting myself. Things would boil over when I was pouring, like making tea and pouring tea into a cup. It would overflow. I would trip over things in the sitting room. And walking into doors was a nightmare, because at home the doors were left ajar, so I'd walk straight into them. So going out on my own, never. I always needed someone on my right side, so my confidence had gone. I get into department stores, I have knocked stands over in department stores because I didn't see them. Going out to dinner, going to a restaurant, was the right nightmare. Going to crowded places, I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to go because I just didn't feel safe. And my other thing that always happened is I suffered pedestrian rage, where I'd maybe bump into somebody or knock something over or get in the way of someone, and generally I'd get a mouthful of abuse because I didn't see them. It doesn't just affect you as a person, it affects your family, everybody around you. So it's not just one person you're dealing with, you're dealing with a family, and that's a lot of things that happened to me that weren't taken into account, was the fact that my family were involved in this.
Just walking through a doorway, I would think that I was aiming for the centre of the doorway, but always end up banging my arm, frequently bang my arm, judging distances when I was walking. That was a problem. I had a baby when I had my stroke. She was 4.5 months old when I first had my stroke. Trying to feed a child that doesn't want what you're feeding her, trying to see where her mouth was, for me that was a big hurdle to get over. And we've actually got a photograph of my baby sat in her high chair with banana in her eyes because I poked her in the face. She's moved and I kind of tried to put the food in her eye, but thankfully it was just banana, so it was fine. Yeah, so it's been funny times as well. There's miserable times.